right, so picture this. You wake up one morning, right, and you open up your go-to map app like you always do, but something's off. The Gulf of Mexico is just gone, poof, and instead, staring back at you is the American Gulf.
Sounds wild.
That's totally bonkers, right?
Yeah.
But get this. You, our amazing listeners, sent us these sources, and they suggest this almost happened. That's what we're diving into today. Welcome to the deep dive, everybody.
Yeah, so we're going deep into the world of geographical myths and uncovering the stories behind, well, the names on the maps, the names that shape how we see the world, you know?
Absolutely. And speaking of names, this whole American Gulf thing, it really highlights just how ambitious, how bold a young nation can be.
Yeah, a young nation trying to, let's be honest, flex its muscles a little. The Gulf of Mexico, I mean, come on, it's vital. A melting pot of cultures, a trade hub, an energy powerhouse. But for a bit there, back in the 19th century, some U.S. leaders, they saw it differently, like way differently.
He saw it as their own, basically.
Yeah, like their own personal pond.
So before we get to that whole American Gulf debacle, let's rewind a bit. What was the Gulf called before all this? Our sources mention a bunch of different names, like Sino Mexicano.
Right, and Bahia del Espíritu Santo, which basically translates to Bay of the Holy Spirit.
See? Way more poetic. And then you've got the French explorers, bless their hearts, who decided to call it Mer du Nord, which, if you don't speak French, means North Sea.
Talk about a geographical fail. The Gulf of Mexico is about as far from the North Sea as you can get.
It really makes you realize just how, messy map making was back then, right? Different explorers, different languages, different ways of seeing the world.
Exactly. It was a bit of a free-for-all, cartographically speaking. But that's what makes it so interesting. Each name is like a snapshot of a moment in time. This clash of cultures, the struggle for control, it's all there.
Right. It's all about who gets to put their stamp on this super important waterway. Yeah. And then zoom. Fast forward to the 19th century. Manifest destiny is in full swing. The U.S. has annexed Texas, Florida's already a state, American trade in the Gulf, it's exploding.
Booming. And that's when this idea pops up. The Gulf needs a new name, a more, American name.
American meaning belonging to the United States.
Exactly. And it wasn't just about semantics, oh no. It was about power, owning it, reshaping the map literally to fit their vision.
They even tossed around names like American Gulf, Gulf of Florida, even Gulf of New Orleans. Can you imagine?
It sounds ridiculous now, doesn't it? But it really shows how maps and names, they're not just, lines and labels. They can be tools of power, tools to push an agenda.
Okay, so the million-dollar question. Why didn't any of these names stick? The U.S. back then, they weren't exactly pushovers, right? They could have just made it happen.
That's where things get interesting, because renaming a body of water, especially one shared by a bunch of different countries, isn't like renaming, a street.
Way more complicated, for sure.
It has huge international consequences. Imagine diplomatic nightmares, trade wars, even just total chaos for ships trying to navigate. Different countries calling the same place by different names. A recipe for disaster.
Makes sense. It's like a butterfly effect, right? The tiny change, renaming a gulf, could trigger huge waves across the entire region, maybe even the world.
Bingo. And it shows that even back in the 19th century, there were limits. Even for a powerful nation, there were things you just couldn't force on the world.
So diplomacy won out. International relations, the need to cooperate, they all stopped this almost American Gulf from becoming, the actual American Gulf.
And that's kind of mind-blowing, isn't it? That this seemingly simple thing, a name, could have such massive ripple effects.
Totally. So why should we care? This is all ancient history, right? Why does it matter today?
It matters because these almost maps, these what-if scenarios, they're windows into the past. They show us the ambitions, the anxieties, the whole mindset of the people who created them.
Right, so it's not just about geography.
It's about understanding history, understanding how we got to where we are today. In the case of the almost American Gulf, we see a nation grappling with its newfound power, trying to find its place on the world stage, and ultimately being held back by the realities of, a very complex world.
It's like those old maps weren't just mapping out land, they were mapping out dreams, ambitions, power struggles.
Exactly, and by understanding those motivations, we gain a much deeper appreciation for how history unfolded. And sometimes, what didn't happen is just as important as what did happen.
That's fascinating. So we've established the U.S. didn't manage to rename the Gulf of Mexico. But this got us thinking, what other crazy geographical myths are out there? What other almost maps could have totally changed the world as we know it?
Well, one that really jumps out from our sources is this whole idea of a unified North America. Back in the 19th century, there were some serious discussions about, get this, the US and Canada merging into one giant supernation.
Whoa, United States of Canada. That would have been something else. Imagine the political debates, the cultural mashups.
Oh yeah, could you imagine a hybrid national anthem, some kind of "Oh Canada" meets the Star-Spangled Banner situation?
Now that's a thought.
Yeah.
But seriously, why would they even consider such a thing?
Well, the main idea was that, to some folks at least, Canada's destiny was, like, intertwined with the US. They figured, why not just make it official?
Interesting. But clearly it didn't pan out.
Nope. Thankfully, for Canadian identity and maybe their musical traditions, the idea stayed just that. An idea.
Okay, so no mega North American nation. What other almost maps did we dig up from these sources?
How about a story of rebellion and statehood? A little closer to home, in the 1940s, there was this whole movement to create a brand new state. They called it Jefferson, and they wanted to carve it out of Northern California and Southern Oregon.
Wait, hold on. They wanted to create a whole new state from scratch. Were they serious?
Oh yeah, they were dead serious. They even staged armed protests. For a while there, the state of Jefferson seemed like it could actually happen.
Wow, that's wild. So what happened? Why isn't Jefferson on the map today?
Well, World War II broke out, and suddenly, national priorities shifted, the movement kind of fizzled out, lost its steam, and Jefferson remained just a dream, a what-if on the map of history.
It's amazing how these seemingly small events, these local movements, could have completely reshaped, the political map, even the cultural landscape.
Totally. From a potential continental union to a near-miss state, the maps we know could have been so different.
Okay, last one from these sources. This one seems a little more, legendary.
This one dips its toes into the realm of myth and legend for sure. We're talking about Atlantis. The lost city of Atlantis, supposedly submerged beneath the Gulf of Mexico.
Atlantis,
Yeah.
like the mythical city swallowed by the ocean.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah, seriously. It's been a persistent idea for centuries. Now, is there any hard scientific proof? Not really.
I was going to say,
But you've got to admit, the Gulf's deep trenches, the mysterious underwater formations, they definitely fuel the imagination, don't they?
oh, absolutely. It makes you wonder what secrets are still down there, hidden beneath the waves. Okay, we've gone from renamed gulfs to phantom states to legendary cities. It's been a wild ride. But let's get real for a minute. Why does any of this matter? Why should we care about these geographical what-ifs?
That's the key question, isn't it? These names, these almost maps, they're more than just lines on a page. They carry history. They reflect ambitions, cultural clashes, even fears from different eras.
It's like each name, each potential border tells a story about what could have been.
Exactly. And think about it. If the U.S. had successfully renamed the Gulf of Mexico, we'd probably be talking about, a totally different set of international relations, maybe even trade wars. The name itself would become a symbol, right? A symbol of one nation's power over others.
Whoa, yeah. That puts things in perspective. It's like a name isn't just a name. It has real power. It shapes how we see a place, how countries interact, even how history unfolds.
Absolutely. And sometimes these battles over names, they can get really complicated, even emotional. Like, take the city of St. Petersburg. During the Soviet era, they renamed it Leningrad. And then after the Soviet Union collapsed, it went back to St. Petersburg.
So more than just changing a few letters on a map.
Right. These changes reflected huge shifts in ideology, in cultural identity. It wasn't just about a name. It was about, reclaiming a history, redefining who they were as a people.
Powerful stuff. So it's not just about maps, it's about ownership, about shaping narratives, about controlling how people see a place, its history, its people.
Exactly. And it can get really messy. Look at Burma. The ruling military junta, they renamed it Myanmar. But that name change is still super contested. A lot of people refuse to use the new name as a way of protesting the regime.
Wow. So even something as simple as a name can become a battleground for it, like political ideology, cultural identity. It's a reminder that geography, it's never neutral. It's always intertwined with power, with history, with what it means to belong to a place.
Exactly. It's a lens through which we can view, all the complexities of human history, the ambitions of nations, and the constant struggle for recognition, for identity.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into these geographical myths, these almost maps, these names that could have been, it really makes you think, doesn't it? About the names that are missing from the maps we know.
Yeah, the names that were erased, renamed, forgotten.
Like lost echoes, whispers of stories that aren't told anymore.
Exactly. And those missing names, they tell us a lot about power, about the forces that shaped our world, sometimes through, well, let's be honest, not so great things like colonization, conflict, political upheaval.
It's like these landscapes we inhabit, they hold memories, identities that have been silenced, pushed aside.
And that's why it's so important to listen to those voices, to uncover those stories. Like, think about indigenous communities. So many of them have seen their traditional place names replaced, anglicized.
Yes, stripped of their original meaning, their cultural significance.
Exactly. And reclaiming those names, restoring them to the maps, it can be really powerful. It's about acknowledging the past, understanding how it shapes the present, and working towards a more inclusive, more accurate representation of the world.
A world where everyone's story is told, where every place is recognized for its true history, its cultural depth.
Maps, they're not just about navigation, right? They're reflections of power, of ideology, of whose story gets told and whose gets left out.
It's like by digging deeper into the stories behind the names, both the ones that are shouted loud and clear and the ones that have been whispered or even silenced, we can start to see the world, I don't know, differently, more completely.
Exactly. More honestly, too, right? This whole deep dive, it's been a real journey for me. We started with this almost comical idea of renaming the Gulf of Mexico the American Gulf, and it opened up this whole Pandora's box of, like, the power of names, the messiness of history, how geography is tied to our very identities.
Yeah, we've gone from lost states to mythical cities to the enduring power of what if. It's been amazing.
It just goes to show that geography, it's more than just lines on a map. It's a story, woven from exploration, ambition, conflict, and the very human desire to understand, well, where we fit in, where we belong.
I love that. It's been a really inspiring journey, honestly. Makes me want to keep exploring, keep asking questions, keep uncovering those hidden stories.
That's the spirit. Remember, the journey doesn't end here. It's up to all of us to keep those maps handy, keep those questions coming, and keep those minds open to, well, to all the possibilities of history, of geography, of the world around us.
Absolutely. A huge thank you to all of you, our incredible listeners, for joining us on this deep dive into geographical myths.
We hope it sparked some curiosity, inspired you to, I don't know, look at maps a little differently, maybe even see the world with a fresh perspective.
Until next time, keep exploring. There's always more to discover, more to learn, more to discuss. Stay curious.